So can you both see Unit 739? So it's evaluating feedback information and recommending improvements.
Yeah.
So I've created it the same wise. So 1.1 is basically devise processes that will promote to others the value of making and collecting feedback that can allow improvements to others. So again, I've not highlighted it in yellow. Criteria that provide the of having done it. And then 1.2, encourage the collection of work improvement feedback from others, at least 6 of the others. So again, what you basically need to do is just select any 6 of those and just provide information. So improvements, so it might be information from your subcontractors, something that's in the contract or project documentation or organizational documentation. It might be a standard detail or a specification that perhaps has changed or has been improved. So as I say, that's more about, those 2 are just about providing the evidence of this. But if we then talk through 1.3, 1.4 and 1.5, that will probably cover the types of things that we then need to discuss in the evidence. So the knowledge questions, basically 1.3, explain ways of promoting the value of making improvements from feedback received from information sources. Now, you earlier, James, mentioned lessons learnt. So you have a lessons learnt process, don't you?
You're on mute, James.
So, yeah, just to put it on mute. Yeah, so we have a lessons learned. We have a take 5 for safety, where we arrive on site and we all sit down and we have a chat about things, or somebody decides something on a change, or
brilliant.
We have a TBS change, task briefings. And
that's fantastic. So again, from what you've got loads and loads of ways of doing this. So just really, you're just talking about those, what those processes are, and then as regards your evidence, just some of the some of the documentation that comes from those processes. Within the lessons learned, is that a formal process, a formal meeting as such?
No, it's a take 5 for safety. And for example, you'll have on site, you'll see something and you'll just sit back and say, right, we'll take 5 for safety. We don't like the access. It's a bad access, slips and falls. So we'll take 5 for safety. We've stood back and we've reassessed it. We need to put some stone down, or we need to get some pedestrian mat in place. Lessons learned from a site visit. If you've come across something and you're not happy with it, they could have done it a different way. They could have accessed it a different way. They could have carried out the repairs a different way. They could have done scaffolding instead of open access or anything like that.
Brilliant. So fantastic examples there, James. So say for example, you've learnt those lessons from a current project, and next month you've got a very similar project that's gonna start. So do you have a mechanism whereby you think, actually, we learned some really good lessons here, I want to make sure that those are embedded into this next project?
No, not really. We don't. No, not in our teams. We don't.
Okay.
No, we don't. It's, the only way we feed it back is when we do a presentation. If we do a presentation to the actual contractors, to the lads, get them all together, individual contractors, and we show findings that we found from other contractors, and don't known findings.
So again, that fits perfectly there, doesn't it? To talk about a little bit about that process, because that's a way, isn't it, of communicate. I mean, it links to what we were talking about earlier in the other unit, actually, doesn't it? These are lessons that we've learned. These are the improvements that we need to make, and that's how you're then presenting that to them. So that's great. 1.4, explain methods that can encourage the collection of feedback. So you carry out your inspections, but is there a mechanism where other people might make suggestions. I know some companies might use suggestion boxes, or you know, your subcontractors might perhaps want to raise something where they feel that things possibly should be improved.
We have a progress meeting every month. It should be today,
Okay.
actually. We all the project management team and the quality assurance team, and we submit our findings and they submit their findings, and also talk about the commercial and also their protocols and good practices. They never show any bad practices. It's always good practices.
Perfect.
And
Perfect. And so that's a nice approach, actually, James. So do you purposely? I like that approach, actually. You don't call it bad. You just talk about what would be good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Positive trends, good practices, positive trends, and things like that. But I identify the actual findings on site. So all the bad stuff comes from me.
Right.
I'm always the bad one.
Right. Yeah. Brilliant.
You bad man.
That's right.
It is. That's the case.
Yes. You're the big stick, James. So again, brilliant. You know, just talk about those processes. So give reasons why the collection of feedback from why is it important to gather that feedback?
To learn from.
To learn from, and then basically, you know, it almost comes back to our I was going to say it's a triangle. It's normally improvements in time, cost, quality, but I think also health and safety is more like a square now, isn't it? So I think, you know, you gather that information so that you can make improvements, so that the work in the future, you know, is going to have improvements on make sure it's completed on time, making sure it's completed to the required quality standards, making sure that it's completed within cost, and also making sure that it's completed safely. Those really are the reasons why we do that, isn't it? It's so we can become better and more efficient at what we do.
Yeah.
And I suppose importantly, so we don't make the same mistakes again.
Shut up. Can you hear dog snoring?
Oh, I didn't.
Can you hear me? No.
I can't. No. I think it was yours earlier, Kieran. Possibly. I can hear what there was one. Yeah, in or out. I think it sounded like at one point earlier on, but
Yeah.
So performance area 2, then looking at that, so collect feedback, and I think you've both, and again it's collect, it's just provide the evidence. You've both mentioned many of these already today. So the evidence that you'd upload is just something like an inspection report. I know you, Kieran, mentioned snagging, so a snagging report, meeting minutes, and it says at least 3. So I would suggest, you know, something like you know, an inspection report, snagging report, meeting minutes. There's 3 pieces of evidence that would cover that. You know, and I think in particular the inspections you carry out and the that weekly project review meeting that takes place would be perfect evidence for that. Oops, sorry, that one I've just seen there. I need to just apologies. We just need to adapt. That should have been highlighted in yellow. Just pick that one out.
Which one?
So it's 2.3 should be in yellow. I'm going to just move that up a touch. I was sort of finishing these off this morning actually, so I missed that one. Put that in there. So as I say, 2.1 and 2.2 really are just where you provide evidence that you've been inspecting and discussing things in meetings, and perhaps have some snagging documentation or non-conformance documentation. So explain ways that ensures that feedback from information sources is obtained using various methods and sources. So I think your process there, you're carrying out regular inspections, you're having weekly progress meetings, project meetings. And from what you described as well, Kieran, obviously on completion of a project, you know, it's the whole thing is evaluated, isn't it? And you know, it's snagged before it's signed off. So you're just really describing that process.
So when we're answering 2.2, that's pretty much covered by 2.1. Can we put in the box there 2.2 is the equivalent of answer 2.1?
You can, and actually on that, Kieran, 2.2 is you're absolutely right. 2.1 and 2.2 is more the fact that you've collected and collated, so it's doing. So it's really provide the evidence, and as you say, really you just a little bit of brief narrative about, you know, see evidence 1, see evidence 2, see, you know, see inspection report, see meeting minutes, see snag, you know, see snag report. For 2.1 and 2.2, it's really just the evidence that you've done it, because actually in 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5 you're going to discuss it and explain it. So again, 2.3 really, then you're just explaining those processes, aren't you? You know, you're carrying out your regular inspections. Do you inspect at specific stages, or is it just an inspection, I don't know, daily, weekly, whatever the time scale is?
It's currently it's as and when we go there. We're trying to implement the use of inspection test plans, but at the minute they're not using them, which would be obviously whole points, witness points, but
yes,
we've had numerous arguments with the PEM about implementing it as part of the V&V, and he's reluctant and saying it's not part of it, where we're disagreeing, saying, well, it is. If you're pouring concrete and you've got rebar in, that should be a whole point, so we can go and witness it and make sure that there's the correct cover, etc. And he said, well, no, you don't need to. So there's a bit of a back and fro at the minute with the ceiling lines.
Right. I must admit, what you were describing there, Kieran, I think is becoming quite standard practice in a lot of. I mean, again, but both construction and civils, but you know, we house building. We do a lot with house building, and I know it's not your area, but I know with the house builders, you know, it's actually has to be signed off at certain stages before it progresses. Because if a problem is then found, it's a huge amount of rework and looking for liability, isn't it? Whereas, you know, if it's signed off, or at least there's photographic evidence, a lot of companies do that, don't they? They will say, right, I want a photograph of that rebar, you know, so I've got documentary evidence. Even though the concrete might have been poured, there was a record of you know, what it looked like, or somebody has signed to say it's been inspected. Here's some photographic evidence. As perhaps a bit of a halfway house, but yeah, I can understand the discussions you're having there. So as I say, you know, you're inspecting as and when that may become a little bit more formalised. You're discussing things weekly in the project meeting, and then basically before the project is finally signed off, you've got that process of snagging, haven't you, and then issuing the TM14, I think you said, Kieran.
Is this 2.3 still we're talking about?
So that was 2.3, James. 2.4, explain methods that allows for investigation and assessing of feedback from information sources. I think, again, Jet, you know, you were talking about that process, weren't you, Jane, in your meetings, you know, where you give your feedback, the contractor gives their feedback. It's those meetings really that are the way that that's done.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one at the minute, because a lot of the meetings are on Teams as well, and you've got no record of them.
Don't worry too much. Again, good point. Sometimes, Kieran, that you might actually say sometimes within our narrative that actually gaining the evidence for this. I think all of us actually. I've certainly done assessments where you sometimes do it in an environment that might be a military environment where the information is like highly classified. So there are times where we have to, the evidence might not be provided for various reasons. But I think, if you've got a set of meeting minutes, if you've got an inspection report and a snagging report, which you've already included. So again, this is where, generally speaking, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 are generally the knowledge around the evidence that you've provided in 2.1, 2.2, if that makes sense. So your evidence of that's going to be things like inspection reports, meetings of minutes, your snagging report, and a TM14 sign off. Ooh. 2.5 is basically asking, so when you give reasons why feedback information needs to be investigated. So when you have your meetings and you give your feedback and the contractor gives their feedback, why are you doing that? What is the whole purpose of that?
We're learning from what we're being told from both sides. We're trying to resolve what the issue, if there is an issue.
James, yep. That's exactly it, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, what you're doing is hoping that again, I'll keep coming back to this. It's time, cost, quality, and health and safety, isn't it? So you're just making sure that progress is maintained. You're doing the reason that you have your regular meetings is that if any issues are identified early,
yes,
so that we don't get to the end of the 12-week program, that tunnel, and we've still it's apparent we've got another 3 or 4 weeks work to do. We're making sure that we can identify any issues early, and then put strategies in place to make sure that as I say, we maintain time, cost, and quality, and health and safety.
Yeah, if training is required or anything, yeah.
Exactly. And that fits in, I suppose, James, with that take 5, isn't it? You go to site, you identify something that you're not particularly happy with, you address it there and then, basically, don't you, in that take 5?
Yeah.
So this particular one, performance criteria 3, again, when I was doing this morning, I sort of think that all 5 of the things in 3 actually sort of link to knowledge. So 3.1, suggest improvements that can be made to work progress using evaluated feedback to relevant people. So my suggestion for the way that you answer that is to think about projects that you've been involved in where during the project improvements have been identified already, and then just provide the evidence of that. So give it 1 or 2 examples of where you've identified it. I think you James, where you said that take 5 actually, we don't want scaffolding or we want better access. Just give a couple of examples of where improvements have been identified, what they were, and then the evidence of that. .2, the asking to justify. So when you visit site, James, and you do a take 5, what's the rationale behind doing that?
You've seen an issue.
Yeah.
You've stood back, you've took 5, and you've said, I need to take 5 here. Is this right or is it not right? Or can I do this safely? Can I do it safely? You've recognised that could be done a different way. It could be either cost effective or it could be safety.
Excellent, excellent. So I think where I was coming on here is it's not because James Mason thinks it's because James Mason identifies that this can be done safer, this can be done better. So you know, that's why your justifications are on the basis of it. You know, it can be done safer, it can be done more cost efficiently, you know, quicker, more efficiently. So that's really your justifications, isn't it?
Yeah.
Explain ways that recommendations for improvements can be made. So that could be within discussions in meetings, backed up by meeting minutes. It could be a take 5 conversation on site. I can hear the dog now, actually.
Yeah, he's lost all his teeth. He's lost all his teeth and his tongue's hanging out. He can't hold his tongue in his mouth, and he's 11 years old now. And I've got to keep my eye on him at the moment.
Yeah, he sounds like he's deeply in sleep, doesn't he? Yeah. So 3-3 again, 3-4. They're not overly elaborate answers at all. You know how you justify those. It very much, isn't it? This work can be done safer. It can be done quicker, more cost efficiently.
What did you say for that one? Sorry, Andy.
So 3-4. Or, well, I suppose that in some respect they all sort of link together, really, Kevin. So explains ways that recommendations can be made. So that's going to be in discussions. You know, it might be face to face with the contractor on site. It might be a little bit more formalised, where it's actually in the weekly meeting. You might. Do you use James's Take 5?
Some sites do, Murphy's do, but some of the other contractors not really. No.
Okay. Sometimes as well. Sometimes in answering these, you might, although it might not necessarily be practice across the business, it might be, well, here's an example that I know some people use, or sometimes you might be drawing on experiences from previous roles or previous companies where you think, well, actually, you know, we don't do it with Network Rail, but I have experienced this somewhere else, which might fit with particular criteria. So that's just, you know, sometimes it might be an inspection report with actions, you know, your snagging report you'll send to, presumably you send your snagging report to the subcontractor and say, you know, please get on, do these and let me know when they're completed. Yeah. So as I say, you know, it might well be those improvements. Here's a snag report. Sometimes it might be an email where you just say to people, you know, actually, you know, I've identified this. Please make sure, you know, it's corrected and it doesn't happen again. So then moving on to 3-4, the reason for me, your justifications are always going to be based around something to do with improvements in safety, improvements in time, or making sure that the work is completed on time. It could be to do with cost, you know, making sure that it's cost or minimize the cost implications, and the project gets completed on time. You know, those will always be your justifications, won't they? I don't think there's any other reason that you're going to justify changes or improvements. Time, cost, quality, health and safety. Is there any other reason you could think of why you'd look to implement a change or an improvement?
It's pretty much that, really. Safety, the cost completed on time, and the quality, because that's really what we do. it's the quality and the assurance of the works that the contractors are delivering. So it's as vague as it is pretty much.
It's all. It's as you say, Kate, it's not actually vague. In reality, that is everything we do, isn't it? It's about time. It's about cost. It's about the quality of the work, and obviously, as I say, health and safety. That was known as, I think it was known as the eternal triangle, actually, with regards to construction work. And as I say, this health and safety has very much become a part of that. So it's a square now rather than a triangle. So, you know, give reasons why recommendations for improvements from feedback should be made. It's because you can make, you know, on the current project and on future projects, you know, ultimately that work is being done is those same points really, you know, so that the work can be done safer. It's cost efficient. It maintains program and bring quality assurance. The quality, bring back, you know, having to carry out rework, which is time consuming and costly. So you know, you want to avoid that, don't you?
So you know what, one thing that gets me about that now, we've got question 3.4 and 3.5.
Yeah.
Which was similar to the one before.
Yeah.
Obviously, the evidence from 3.5 and 3.4 is the same.
Yeah.
Would we not be better off now removing, say, question 3.5 and giving more detailed answer to 3.4, so you're not duplicating the answer again?
Yeah. So it's a very, I say, a very valid point, Kieran, and you're as I say, if I had £1 for everybody who said similar, you know, I'd be quite aware. What I would suggest is if you answer 3.3 and you've answered 3.3 and you get to 3.4 and think, actually, I've already said that, just say 3.3. Okay. See 3.5. The reason I'm suggesting that is ultimately we have to prove, you know, I can assess you and say, you know, yes, you've passed, but the awarding body are the ones who award the qualification. So they will just want to see how we've mapped your answers and your evidence. So as I say, I don't expect you to reproduce or duplicate, but if we leave the criteria in there, but you signpost how you've covered it. Yeah. So my answer to 3.3 covers this. Brilliant. So by all, don't reinvent the wheel or you know, complete saying that I've got to read the same stuff over and over again. So not only have you got to produce it, I've got to read it. So we all benefit. So the final final criteria for this unit. So summarise using suitable format changes to work programmes which have resulted from SORT feedback. So again, 4.1 and 4.2, as I say, they're doing or having the evidence. So I think what you'd do there, you'd have some program document. Your evidence would be program documentation. It might be something that's included in the project meeting minutes, you know, where you've discussed progress. From what you were saying earlier, do you get programs that are then potentially updated as the project progresses?
If we hit delays, yeah.
Okay, so again, I just factor something about, you know, if there is a delay, obviously, you know, that needs to be discussed. Our actions are then agreed, and that could then result in a you know, a new program being issued. And that pretty much covers that.
Hi, Andy.
So yes, go on, John.
Hi, gents. I just come back. I just want to share something, if that's okay. It literally take me 2 minutes just to show you, because I've created a little video just about today's session, really, what we've been doing, how you're doing it, just to refresh everyone's mind, you know, if and when you come back to it. Hopefully you'll see what I'm trying to share. And no, wrong one. Sorry. As I say, I'm better with one file than I am with Teams.
I've had a real oddity actually. I've got a document on my screen that I can't share with James and Kieran.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
ideal.
I'm in as a centre manager, but when you go in as a learner, you will see the resources on the left hand side here. I'm in as a manager just because I have to create them, so that's easier for me to do. But in the resources folder, we've got another folder called NVQ 6 19 units. And in there, the candidate documents, everybody should have access to that. You won't even see these other ones because they're things for me and Andy and other people within the centre. But the candidate documents you should have access to. And inside there, what I've just done is I've done an assessment 713, and that's a link. Basically, I did a little short video. I'll click it, but we won't hear the sound because it doesn't sort of let you share the sound that's on the recording. But when you click it, you will hear it. And basically what I've done is I've done a little assessment. You can't hear that, can you?
No, John. No,
I didn't think you would. So basically that just takes you through the process that we talked about how you select attachments, click them on. Just sort of step-by-step guide on how you do that process that we've been talking about this morning. Is that okay?
Yep.
And just, it's in that resource folder. So, when later on, if you need to remind yourselves how to do it, that's just easy to go back to. Because a lot of these things, as I say, when Andy and I get CPD on it, every time you think, what button did they click? Where did I do that? You know what I mean? It can become a little bit clunky. So
what did he say?
Yeah, I'm trying to do
what did he say?
rather than a huge one, just to help us all.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. Thank you very much, mate. I'm good. I'll come out again now anyway. But thanks, guys. Nice to meet you anyway, and good luck with everything. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Cheers, John.
Cheers.
Thanks, John. So 4.3, just the final couple of questions on this unit. So 4.3, explain methods that can allow the summary of change and improve. Discuss take fives. You're discussing those in your weekly meetings. I think you're absolutely both making the point. Sometimes the answers and the units can get a little bit repetitive, but either do signpost an earlier answer, or perhaps if it was something that you put in another unit, you might just want to cut and paste it from that unit and just stick it in here to cover that. And the final one there, describe how the adoption of changes and improvement can be promoted. So you're going to promote them within your meetings. You're going to promote them within your take five sessions. Where you're actually saying, whoa, let's take five here. Let's do it like this, and therefore if we do it like this, we've then got improvements in whatever it be. Safety, quality. But you're sort of communicating that to everybody. I think also, James, you mentioned those presentations you give to subcontractors. That's a really good way, isn't it, of this is good practice that we expect to be followed on our projects, and that's that. Any questions that arise from 739?
No, it's fine. Apart from 4.2 and 4.1, I know we talked about programs, but what sort of evidence base could we put in there?
So I think evidence-wise, James. So you've got programs and adoption of improvements. So I think it's something you might get an updated program. It might be something that you've discussed in one of your weekly meetings, because I'm presuming you discuss progress in your meetings.
Yeah.
It also, it could be that presentation that I've just been mentioning, you know, that you might learn lessons on one project that you actually incorporate into a presentation for presenting, you know, for future projects or to new contractors or you know, the same contractor, to say, actually, on our projects going forwards, this is the way that we want this work to be done.
Yeah.
Would you ever get a situation in one of your take fives where, I don't know, people sort of, shall we say, disagree with what you're suggesting, or don't think that it's a good idea?
Yeah, you'll always get people who think it's better to do a different way, or people who want to argue for the sake of arguing.
Yeah, that's true. do you ultimately though, James? I mean, it's sort of, that goes with your position, and actually, you know, if you want those changes to be made, then ultimately it's, you know, if you so wish, then they will be made. Or
yeah, it's not very often they're not, but
yeah.
But come for example, I went out to a site the other week, and we've got a traffic management company setting out traffic management. Our standards Network Rail is helmet, glasses, full PPE and gloves, no matter what we're doing.
Yeah.
So he hadn't got his helmet and his glasses on. I approached him and said, "Well, where's you put your glasses on?" It was a polite request. I said, "Can you put your glasses on your helmet, mate, to everybody else?" And he says, "No, I don't need to." I said, "Well, why is that then?" He says, "Well, we don't need to. We're doing traffic management. It says Road and Regulation Traffic Act. We don't need to do it." I said, "Well, you're working for us." I says,
Yeah.
"We're the client. Our standards are full PPE." Anyway, he said, "Well, I've spoke to my director and he's told me I don't need to, and I'm not wearing it," and walked off. Carried on, and he come back over and I said, "Right, well, show me your risk assessment where it says you don't need to wear it then." And he said, "Well, they're all generic anyway." I said, "Well, they are what they are." I said, "But you show me what says you do not need to wear it." Anyway, it's just gone from there then. It's gone all the way up to fucking director level. Stupid.
Yes.
And at the moment in time, they're still arguing about whether they should do or shouldn't do. And I've just said to them, well, as far as I'm concerned, we're the client. You're working for us. It's our work site, so you do it until somebody tells you you're not required to wear it. I'm going to keep pulling it.
Absolutely.
The first time he has an accident, they'll either turn around and say, "Well, I've had an accident because I've got my helmet and glasses on," or they'll turn around and say, "I've had an accident because I haven't." But somebody needs to be able to say, "Well, yes, you've got to," or "You haven't," and that's got to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm presuming, James, ultimately, contract that signed, there was something in there that our rules are, and you know, like you say, full PPE. You know, I would expect it's in the content. And it's literally, if you want to work for us, my take on this, if you want to work for us, these are our rules and our procedures. You either follow them, or ultimately you don't work for us, and we'll get someone who will follow the rules and procedures.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's
gone a lot higher than me now. It's gone to senior program manager, and he's talking to their directors about it. And like I said, just tell me what you want to do. If you want us to tell them they're required, they don't need to wear it, or they are required. I just need to know. Yeah,
and I'll implement whatever procedures I'm asked to. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Isn't it funny though? Sometimes, how, like you say, people, rather than just complying and you know, doing what everybody else is doing, you know, the level that it then goes to is crazy, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Waste of everybody's time, really.
So all he's done now is he's got my back up. So every time I go to site now, I'll clamp down on everything. So I'll go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And if it's wrong, I will stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. That, I mean, that again, that's human nature, isn't it? That is how we'd all respond. Very much so, James. Yep.
Yeah. I'm not prepared to work with him. Normally, you give guidance and support and say, "Put that right, put this right," but not with them now. They've had it. Yeah. They've done.
And I think, as you say, it actually, there's underlying issues, isn't there? You know, you've picked him on PPE, but that will reflect in other aspects that they seem to be doing what they see is fit, rather than actually what you want as the client. Yeah. Brilliant. So I'll close that one down. Again, I don't understand the reason why my documents are not displayed on the screen, actually, but if I could therefore just ask that, just in case that recording for that.